if you constantly trigger your stress response, you're constantly stressed. And then you have the stress of paying your bills. Then you have the stress of managing your relationship. Then you have the stress, if you have kids, of taking care of your kids and raising them to the best of your ability. But your brain isn't working well. Because while it's okay to have stress, because stress isn't necessarily bad, if you have chronic stress, that's bad. If you're going through your life triggered, you're not going to be making as much money. You're not going to be the best parent that you can be. You're not going to be the best employee you can be. You're not going to be the best business owner you can be. You're not going to be the best anything you can be. Do you really need more stress in your life and stressing about things that you don't control?
What's up, my friend? I'm health expert Ted Rice, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk Friday. Really excited for this episode because we're going to talk about some stuff that's been going on recently. So I'm coming to you from Bangkok, Thailand right now, but I won't be here much longer. I'm going to be on my way to the United States, Vero Beach, Florida, to go see my dad. Now, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time and you're wondering, where is this even going? What Legendary Life is about breaking down the mindset and the science of transforming your body, losing fat, optimizing your energy levels, preventing disease, and living a long, amazing, legendary life. But on Real Talk Fridays, we talk about other things. We talk maybe about the mindset or the mental health aspect or psychological aspects of health. And so what we're going to talk about today is about the current events that are happening. I mean, I think it's safe to say that 2020 is off to a tense start, at least if you're watching the news. So if you're feeling a bit tense about 2020 because of all the talk about the Middle East, Iran, North Korea, elsewhere in the world, if you know that it's going to be a complete shit show for a good majority or the majority of Americans because of the election, it's going to be election year. How crazy is it going to be at the end of the year? How many triggered, out of control, nutcase acting? I mean, whether they're justified in their beliefs about, for Trump or against Trump, just acting absolutely nuts. You know what's coming. And here's the thing, I don't want you to be one of those people. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because part of health is about managing our stress. And managing our stress isn't about clicking open your Headspace app and meditating for 10 minutes a couple times a week, or even every day. It's about the things in our life that we do that we don't really need to do, or the things in our life that we get stressed about that we don't really need to stress about, the things in our life that we think about that we shouldn't really be spending that much energy thinking about. So let's talk about this for a second. So it's off to a tense start, right? This thing with Iran going on, North Korea, the election, stock market is dipping, oil prices are rising. The UK had an election, people went nuts. A lot of people were upset about the way it turned out. Stressful for some, but you know what else? Those stressful events, the ones that are shoved in front of our face every time we open up Facebook or Twitter, or turn on the news or go on a news website, they're mostly out of our control. I mean, there's next to nothing you and I can do to control, manage, or influence the chaos that's occurring on the world stage right now. It's totally out of our hands. What you can do is you can make Facebook posts and argue with people and get all riled up. You can vote for whoever you think is going to do the best job in that crazy office known as the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. But besides that, there's not so much that we can do. But if that's the case, then why do we spend so much time stressing about things that we can't do? Well, I would argue this. Part of it's just, number one, is our negativity bias. Have you ever heard of that? If you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you've heard of it. What is a negativity bias? Well, it's really easy, right? We pay attention to things that are more threatening because they're a threat. If you're just talking about curing cancer and, kissing babies, right? Babies are born and, all the amazing positive things that are happening. And I meant kind of like, politicians kissing baby. I don't know why I said that. It was kind of weird, whatever. But what I mean is like all the positive things going on, right? All the breakthroughs. How many breakthroughs recently can you name? Or even this, raise your hand right now, and don't do this if you've got both hands on the wheel and you need both hands to drive, but just make a mental note or raise your hand. Like, have you been exposed to negative news in the past few hours, in the past day, in the past week? And think about how many times you've been exposed to it. That triggers that negativity bias. It starts to make us think that the world is a really bad place because it raises your stress hormones and puts you on edge. It makes you hypervigilant. And then we have the fact that instead of waiting around for Monday's paper to come out or Sunday's paper or whatever, I never was a newspaper reader. But I believe my dad was for a little while. Things kind of changed, but there's people who would wait for the paper to be printed, right? And you would get all the stories. I think it was the Sunday paper, maybe the Monday paper, but you get all the stories in the newspaper, but you'd have to wait for them. You'd have to wait for the stories. People had to put them together and edit them and put them on the newspaper, and you'd have to wait for it to be printed, and then you'd have to go get the newspaper or have it delivered to your house. But now it's shoved in front of your face. As soon as something pops off, you know about it on Twitter within seconds, right? Seconds. Think about that. The time it takes for something to happen, especially a negative event, and somewhere in the world that you probably would have trouble finding on a map, and now you know in seconds, at the most minutes, that it happened. And so this is just, the pinging is going crazy, right? The Twitter pings, the Facebook pings, we're all scrolling all the time, and not all of us. I don't spend that much time doing that. And we're going to talk about whether you should or not in a second. But there's all these things going off. So we are already programmed to pay attention to threat because, right, learning about positive things and medical breakthroughs and cures to diseases and a reduction of infant mortality rates and an increase in democratic governments running countries and an increase in literacy and an increase in wages and all these things. It just bounces off of you. It just goes in one ear and out the other. But someone talks about a mass shooting. Someone talks about someone got drone striked in Iran, and the world leaders, Trump and whoever the guy is on the Iranian side, they're going at it, and it's just out of your control. And what this does is it triggers our stress response. But if you constantly trigger your stress response, you're constantly stressed. And then you have the stress of paying your bills. Then you have the stress of managing your relationship. Then you have the stress, if you have kids, of taking care of your kids and raising them to the best of your ability. But your brain isn't working well. Because while it's okay to have stress, because stress isn't necessarily bad, if you have chronic stress, that's bad. Stress isn't bad. Stress, working out is stress, but that's how it gets strong, how your body gets stronger. Events that are stressful, maybe, something tense that you go through with your partner, your spouse, may be tense, but you get through it together on the other side. You're like, hey, that was a tense moment, but we got through it together. So you have that relief. But with these world events right now, what do? You're powerless. You cast your vote every 4 years. And if you vote, with the local politics or the other elections, okay, but what else do you do? What I'm trying to say here is, if you're going through your life triggered, you're not going to be making as much money. You're not going to be the best parent that you can be. You're not going to be the best employee you can be. You're not going to be the best business owner you can be. You're not going to be the best anything you can be. Do you really need more stress in your life and stressing about things that you don't control? And you may say, and what people used to say, I got into my arguments with my dad. I can't wait to interview my dad. By the way, you've got to hear my dad. We have such a good relationship now, but it's taken a long time to get here. But he is just one of the most interesting, knowledgeable guys I know, and I know a lot of people. So he used to tell me, well, I got to stay informed. And it's like, well, okay, what I want you to think about now is this. Think about how you're staying informed. Think about how much time and energy you dedicate to staying informed. And think about the return on that investment of time and energy. What do you get for it? Because if the answer is only that you're stressed and that you argue with people more and that that's not, at least to me, a worthwhile return on my investment of time and energy. Is it for you? So how can we do better? Well, first, we've got to realize how we're wired. We've got a negativity bias. We've got a threat detection system, and it help keep us alive. That's why you're here. That's why your ancestors all made it to this point to where you could be here today. And if you're smart, you'll pass on your genes and your ancestors will be here long past, long after you're gone. So you've got to understand this. This is how we're wired. Whether you want to believe that's evolution, God, the universe, doesn't matter to me. As long as you understand that's one of the rules. We're wired in a certain way to protect ourselves. And the second thing is that you must accept that there are things that you simply can't control. You've got to understand that you simply can't control things. And if you're spending time stressing about them and you can't control them, well, it's no wonder you feel so powerless in your life. And maybe that powerless that you feel to impact these world events maybe starts bleeding over. Infecting is actually a better word, infecting other areas of your life. And you start feeling more powerless to get your health under control. You start to feel powerless about raising your kids right. Oh, these kids, they're just millennials and they just don't get it. Really? Because they're following you. You're the one setting the example. I'm not a parent, and there's a reason I'm not one yet. I had to do work on myself to get to the point where I feel like, you know what? I'm not going to fuck this kid up that much, right? That's where I'm at. And I'm finally there. And I've been through a lot. Maybe you haven't been through as much. And I'm not going to get into my story right now if you don't know what I'm talking about, but I've had a lot of loss and tragedy and, terrible things. I told my story to one of the Cambodian genocide survivors. He's like, man, you've had a rough life. I was like, yeah, you too. But you have a genocide survivor saying, man, that's a rough story. That's the type of story I have. So what I'm talking about here is we must make peace with the things that we can't control. We've got to make peace with them somehow. We've got to accept that we can't control the things that, maybe we wish we had control of. And we have to stop spending so much energy on the things that we can't control. How is it helping you to stay informed if you can't actually do anything about it? It just makes you feel powerless. So the third thing then is focus on the things that you can control. I don't want to talk too much about that second one because how do you make peace with the things that you can't control? It's probably a good conversation, but today I want to talk about the things that you can control. For instance, you can control whether you eat too much or you eat the right amount. If you eat too much, you get fat. If you eat the right amount, you stay at the right weight, a healthy weight, a low risk weight, however you want to label it. If you eat the right amount of foods and if you make good choices for those foods, you're going to get more nutrients. And more nutrients is going to make your body healthier because you're going to get the vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients that you need to have the energy that you need to do all the things that you want to do and that you need to do. Another thing you can do is you can control whether you work out or not, how much exercise you get. You can control whether you spend your time binge watching news or binge watching Netflix or getting your butt up and going to a meditation class or a deep breathing class or a yoga class or a Tai Chi class or a Qigong class or whatever. You can also make time for hobbies, interests, and especially you can make time for spend it with other people. And one of the most powerful things that you can control is who you hang out with. One of the biggest lessons that I've taken away from living in Asia for the past couple of years is this. We look at culture, we look at skin color, we look at face shapes, eye shapes. We look at, the striking differences in culture. But for me, the biggest difference that I see is education. Because whether you're Japanese or whether you're from Nigeria, or whether you're from the United States or Australia or Colombia, Finland, from the UK, if we all agree that, for example, it's bacteria that cause infections and you take antibiotics for that, because if you go anywhere in the world, medicine is standardized. Western medicine is standardized in that way, because we all agree it's not spirits that are making us sick. It's bacteria. And if we take an antibiotic, we don't need to pray to the gods or do human sacrifices or any of the other crazy stuff that human beings used to do. We don't need to put leeches on our body or do anything crazy. We just need to take antibiotics. And if we can do that, that comes from education. If we do that, we solve the problem. It works. It works all the time. Well, almost all the time, except for some of these antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria. And I use bacteria for a reason, because now we're dying from heart disease. That's the number one thing, and I think cancer is number 2. Lung issues is number 3. But in the past, it was infectious diseases, especially, things like bacterial infections that took people out. Now, we don't have that problem anymore. It's because of education. Education has to do with where you're born. Because if you're born in a village in in Cambodia, in a place where it's just dirt poor, you're not going to be getting the same level of education in the US, right? Or to Thailand, or even those places in Cambodia that have good education, right? Have good schools. Actually, you got to pay to go to good schools there, because the education's so poor, because the infrastructure is so poor, because they're not investing in it, or not as much as they need to. So what I'm saying is this: education is in part who we're hanging out with. And so beyond your grade school and beyond your college degree and beyond your advanced degree, you've got who you're hanging out with. That's something that you can control and has a major impact on you. That's why I spent so much time talking about all the details about it. Those are things you can control. So what I want you to focus on now is I want you to focus on developing awareness about how easily you get triggered about certain things. And I want you to pay attention what triggers you, how it triggers you, and what you do afterward. Do you start fights? Do you eat? Do you cry? Do you pout? Do you feel that negative energy and then you start talking about negative things and just spread the negativity? So many of us do that. I've been guilty of it myself many times. And the second thing is, how do we, make peace with the things that you can't change? And I'll just share this quickly, because this is so important. Like, for example, if you hear my story, all the things that I've been through, my brother was kidnapped and murdered. My sister committed suicide. My mom died before any of that happened, committed suicide, was mentally ill. I was in an abusive home with her. My stepmom was a raging alcoholic, ended up dying from a heart attack. I mean, just so much loss, right? But even if you don't have a crazy story like that, you're going to suffer the loss of your parents. Things are going to happen to you that you don't want to happen. Probably the biggest thing, if you just really get lucky in life and have nothing bad happen to you, the worst thing is going to be that you're going to lose your parents. Every single one of us is going to have to suffer through that. And we have to make peace with the fact that, they're not going to be here forever. And that's the way it's set up by God, by the universe, by evolution, by something greater than we can even begin to understand. Whatever you want to call it. That's the way it's set up. We have to make peace with that. We have to make peace with the things that happen in our lives that we don't want to happen. There's no way of going back and changing it. Time machines don't exist. And then third, we need to take action on the things that we can control. And let me tell you, a lot of the things that you stress about that you can't control could be solved if everybody on the planet, or even not even everybody, just more people on the planet started taking action on the things that they could control. How they treat others, how they take care of themselves, making sure that they're not passing on all the, repeating all their generational curses, all the patterns that we unfortunately inherited from our messed up parents that a lot of us are repeating. Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to me. It's like, damn, I was estranged from my family for a long time. And then I realized, when I started hanging out with my dad, I'm like, damn, I do so many of the things that he does that are not healthy. How did that even happen? I'm not even like that guy in so many ways, but yet I am, right? Part of it's genetics, part of it's that we spend our formative years. If we all took the time to act on those things to get past those issues we had in our childhood, especially those issues that we had in our childhood, if we all took the time to take better care of ourselves and to treat people with more respect, even when, and maybe even especially when we didn't agree with them, that's the type of world that would at least get us closer to the type of world that would have less of these stressful events that are happening on the world stage. That's a long way away, because you right now probably have some things that you need to step up and do, and you're not doing. And if you're listening to this, you're in the 1% of the world, literally. Who's listening to podcasts like this? In Thailand, they're not. Vietnam, they're not. I mean, some people are listening to podcasts, but it's very low. Most people are listening to music or they're watching the news. That's what's available to them. They're not even in the mindset yet. But you, as an American, as a Canadian, as someone from the UK, as someone from Australia, someone from Europe, you have the ability. You have this. You're in the mindset, the 1%. We're spending your time listening to my crazy ass talk about this stuff. So what can you take action on that you're not currently taking action on now? What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to say no to if you start doing the things that you need to do for yourself? Because one of the keys to not just making the world a better place, but to making your life a better place is controlling your stress, managing your stress. It's one of the most important things. In fact, John Gottman, the relationship guru, he doesn't call himself that. I'm just calling him that, says it's one of the most important things. Emotional control, physiological calm is what he calls it. You're not going to have a good relationship if you can't create physiological calm for yourself. And it is created by yourself, not by your partner. Oh, you made me so angry. You got angry. Your partner just did what they did. You got angry about it. You could have not gotten angry about it, but you get triggered easily. And hey, listen, I'm the same way. I've had the same things, been down the same roads, struggle with all the same stuff, but I'm working on it. One of my big goals this year for 2020 is to be better in relationships. And I'm working with someone, specifically, actually 2 people, to help with that. And I want you to start taking action too. So ask yourself, where do I need to step up and take action? What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to understand about myself so that I can give myself a break and just get some emotional distance from some of the things that I do that I don't like that I do? Because we all have those things. And that's where the gold is, my friends. That's where the gold is. So I think I've pontificated enough for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And we're already nearly a month, we're already nearly through the first month of 2020. To make this different than 2019, to make a bigger impact in your life, in your family's life, in your community, in your country, in the world, whatever level you want to play the game at, it all starts with you. Remember that. And if more people did that, the world would be a very different place. It's a great quote. Everyone wants to change the world, but very few think of changing themselves. I believe that's Tolstoy, the Russian author who I've never read any of his books, but I love that quote because it's so true. Or Gandhi, again, never read any of his books either, but said, be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Even if that's a paraphrase of something he said, which I think it is actually. It's such a great thing to say. It doesn't matter whether he said it or not, because it's such a great concept. Be the change you want to see in the world. And that's what I want to leave you with, my friend. So remember, I love you. I want the best for you. I want you to live that legendary life, but I can only come here and talk. This is me taking action. You're the one that needs to step up and follow through on your end and take action on your end. So please, for yourself, for your family, for all of us. Do it. Love you. Talk soon. Enjoy your weekend, and talk to you on Monday.